Rain fell steadily over the small town of Cedar Ridge. The streets were nearly empty. Store owners hurried inside. Cars splashed through puddles. People rushed home to warm dinners and waiting families. But one man had nowhere to go. 39-year-old Jacob Turner sat alone on a wooden bench outside a closed grocery store. His coat was soaked. His boots were worn. And his eyes carried the kind of sadness that couldn't be hidden. Most people in town knew Jacob, not because he was wealthy, not because he was important, but because everyone knew his story. 3 years earlier, Jacob had everything. A beautiful wife named Sarah, a small house on Oak Street, a steady job running his father's repair shop, and a 6-year-old daughter named Emma who believed her father could fix anything. Life wasn't perfect, but it was good. Then tragedy arrived without warning. One snowy winter night, a drunk driver crossed the center line. Sarah never made it home. The accident shattered Jacob's world. And in the months that followed, everything else began falling apart too. The repair shop struggled, bills piled up, customers disappeared. The bank eventually took the business. The house followed soon after. One loss became another, then another, until eventually Jacob found himself living alone in a tiny rented room above an old hardware store. His daughter now lived with Sarah's parents in another state, not because Jacob didn't love her, but because he couldn't provide the life she deserved. Every day he carried that guilt, every single day. The town felt sorry for him. People whispered about him. Some offered help. Most simply watched from a distance. Over time, Jacob stopped talking, stopped smiling, stopped hopping. He simply existed like a shadow moving through town. And tonight was no different. Rain dripped from the edge of his coat. Cold wind swept through the empty street. Yet he barely noticed. His thoughts were elsewhere, mostly with Emma. Tomorrow was her 10th birthday. He hadn't seen her in almost a year. He had saved money for months to buy a small gift, a necklace shaped like a heart, nothing expensive, but something she might love. Unfortunately, the money was gone. Earlier that morning, his landlord had demanded overdue rent. Jacob had no choice. The gift money disappeared just like everything else. He lowered his head for the first time in years. He felt truly defeated. Then a voice interrupted the silence. "Mind if I sit here?" Jacob looked up. A woman stood beside the bench holding a black umbrella. She appeared to be around 35, long chestnut hair, kind green eyes, simple clothes, nothing flashy, nothing extraordinary, yet something about her presence felt calming. Jacob shrugged. "It's a free bench." Woman smiled, then sat beside him. For several moments neither spoke. The rain continued falling, cars continued passing. The silence felt strangely comfortable. Finally the woman spoke. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world." Jacob laughed bitterly. "Maybe I am." Woman nodded. "Sometimes it feels that way." Jacob studied her. Most people avoided conversations with strangers, especially strangers who looked as miserable as he did, yet she seemed perfectly comfortable. "Do I know you?" he asked. She shook her head. "No." "Then why are you talking to me?" The woman looked across the street. "Because everyone else isn't." Answer surprised him for some reason. It hurt, because it was true. People saw him every day. But nobody really saw him anymore, not the person, only the tragedy, only the broken man. The woman extended her hand. "My name is Hannah." Jacob hesitated before shaking it. "Jacob." "Nice to meet you, Jacob." He almost laughed. Nobody had said those words to him in a very long time, not sincerely, not without pity. Hannah looked toward the dark clouds overhead. "You know what I think?" Jacob sighed. "What?" "I think you're exhausted." Jacob stared. "That's your big observation." She smiled softly. "Physically." Smile disappeared. Emotionally. That struck deeper than he expected, because she was right. He wasn't tired from work or lack of sleep. He was tired from surviving, tired of carrying grief, tired of pretending things would get better, tired of disappointment, tired of waking up every morning and fighting battles nobody could see. For the first time in years, someone understood. The realization made him uncomfortable. He stood. "I should go." But before he could take a step, Hannah quietly spoke the words that stopped him, the words he couldn't walk away from. "What happened to your daughter?" Jacob froze, completely froze. The rain seemed to disappear. The world seemed to disappear. His heart pounded. Very few people ever mentioned Emma. Everyone knew talking about her hurt. Everyone avoided the subject. Everyone except this stranger. Slowly he turned. "Do you know about Emma?" Hannah didn't look away. "I asked around town." Jacob frowned. "Why would you do that?" "Because I saw you sitting here every afternoon." answer caught him off guard. I was curious. Jacob stared silently. Hannah continued. People told me about your wife. Her voice softened. About the accident. She paused. About your daughter. Pain flashed across Jacob's face even after 3 years. Hearing those words hurt. Hannah looked directly at him. And every person told the same story. Jacob waited. They talked about everything you've lost. Rain continued falling. But nobody talked about what you've kept. Jacob frowned. What does that mean? Hannah smiled gently. It means you're still here. Those 4 words hit him harder than expected, because nobody had ever said them, not once. People talked about recovery, healing, moving on, but nobody acknowledged the simple fact that surviving mattered, and somehow, this stranger did. For the first time in months, Jacob sat back down. The conversation continued. 1 hour became 2, then 3. Jacob found himself sharing stories he hadn't told anyone. Stories about Emma, stories about Sarah, stories about the repair shop, stories about dreams that never came true. And Hannah listened. She didn't interrupt, she didn't judge, she simply listened. Sometimes that's the greatest gift one human can offer another. By the time the rain stopped, midnight had arrived. Jacob stood. I should probably get going. Hannah nodded. Probably. For a moment neither moved. Then Hannah reached into her purse. She pulled out a small card, an address, a phone number, and a name. Jacob looked confused. What's this? My family's farm. Jacob blinked. Okay, we need help. He stared. What kind of help? Any kind. Jacob shook his head. I haven't worked on a farm. You can learn. Jacob laughed softly. You don't even know me. Hannah's expression became serious. Know enough. What makes you say that? She smiled. Because broken people recognize broken people. Jacob couldn't answer for some reason. Tears threatened to appear, and he hated crying, especially in front of strangers. Hannah stepped closer, then she spoke quietly. Come tomorrow. Jacob looked down at the card. The address sat 20 miles outside town, a place called Silver Creek Farm. Why are you helping me? Hannah's eyes softened. Because someone helped me once. Before Jacob could respond, she walked away, leaving him standing alone beneath the streetlights, holding a small card and something he hadn't felt in years, hope. The next morning arrived faster than expected. Jacob barely slept. His thoughts raced all night. Part of him wanted to ignore the invitation, stay where it was safe, stay where disappointment couldn't hurt him again, but another part, a part he thought had died years ago, wanted to believe, wanted one more chance. As dawn broke across Cedar Ridge, Jacob boarded an old bus heading toward the countryside. He didn't know it yet, but that single decision was about to change everything. Because Hannah hadn't told him the whole truth, Silver Creek Farm was hiding secrets, powerful secrets, and the woman who had stopped beside a broken man in the rain was carrying wounds of her own, wounds far deeper than anyone imagined. Their lives had crossed for a reason. Neither understood it yet, but fate was already moving, and before long, Jacob would discover why Hannah had looked at the saddest man in town and spoken the only words he couldn't walk away from.